Hello, good morning, everyone. Firstly, I hope everybody is keeping well, and thank you for joining us on today's session with myself, Richard Kennedy, and Patrick Leggett to discuss the avoidable security risks of remote working.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Richard and I, just so that you don't get fed up with the one voice, we're going to bounce between the various slides, but ultimately we wanted to really share our journey. As an IT company, I'm sure everyone expected us to be able to work remotely at the drop of a hat. And we wanted to share some of our challenges and some of the things that we actually had to think about a second time. So we'll focus through that and then really try and give you a view of where we see things going and how we report on a typical day from a security point of view, and ultimately then be open for some Q&A if that's good for you guys. We also have 3 polls, so just to get a wee bit of feedback that we can share just in terms of percentages as we go through this, so please feel free to participate in that as well. Okay, so Richard, if you don't mind going on to the next slide. I suppose, like a lot of us, dare I say, the Brexit word, I mean, the focus that we had all had a few months ago was literally on how we prepare our businesses for Brexit. What does that actually mean? We have 1 year of negotiations and then we come out of Europe. And literally within a few short weeks, everything has changed. And as Sky News put it out there, COVID-19 has become the greatest crisis potentially since the war. People have been forced to self-isolate, people have lost their lives, and we're learning new things like social distancing. And ultimately, the world of work has changed. Businesses have had to really rethink and regroup, and it's been a challenging time for us all. But as I say, it's hard to believe that that was only a few months back. Okay, Richard, if you don't mind, on to the next slide. So, look, we'll focus on our story. It's not a long story. I suppose for us, 5 weeks of remote working can sometimes seem a long time. So we'll try and keep it short. But like a majority of businesses, we made the decision to move all our staff to work remotely as of the 18th of March. And for us, the challenge was literally we have 3 physical offices that we thought of, as in Lisburn, Peterborough, and Glasgow. But overnight, we actually became 103 offices working across the United Kingdom and Ireland. And that's how we basically look at it now. We have 103 offices spread throughout the UK and that. So look, this is our story. And some of the risks and ideally avoidable risks that we can all look at in terms of learning to work more securely remotely. Okay, Richard.
So as we started to prepare as a business for the transition, there was 2 core areas that we needed to focus on. The 2 most common areas, which you'll probably agree on. Number 1 was our people, and secondly, technologies and systems. So on the people front, people are obviously the greatest risk within an organization because users are the entry point for any successful attack, whether it's through user error, for example, the misconfiguration of a router, a firewall, user behavior, for example, if they click a link on a phishing email and disclose their login credentials, for example, such as their email account, or if they install a third-party application whilst they're working remotely, and that may have known vulnerability, which ultimately leads to their system becoming compromised. So we needed to ask ourselves a number of key questions. How do we enforce internet, email, and social media policies, manage and report on adherence to those policies, secure and manage the use of their personal devices, bring your own device, detect, respond to, and address security threats, educate our users on potential changes to internal IT or company policies, all whilst ensuring that staff have access to all of their normal line of business applications, regardless of their device, their internet connection, and their level of IT knowledge. Again, relatively simple. For technologies and systems, managing 3 physical locations, in our case Lisburn, Peterborough and Glasgow, for over 100 users can be challenging on the best of days. So we had to ask ourselves, how are we going to manage 100 plus separate locations which have none of the necessary security measures in place? Whilst we have detailed business continuity plans, which is under our ISO 27001 information security standards, they're there to facilitate remote working for a short period of time. A sudden long-term change will ultimately introduce significant risk. So we asked ourselves, how do we mitigate any additional security risks that home working may introduce? Extend our on-premise security systems to the homes of every employee, monitor the threats to our business in real time so that we can take immediate action to address them, and continuously improve the detection, the response, and management capabilities. We then needed to, on the back of that, produce detailed but concise security threat briefings to the board, address any non-compliance through the use of technology and systems, all whilst maintaining uptime and performance to ensure that the business can operate as normal.
So what we'd like to do is start get our first, if you like, interactive feedback. And we're really keen to get your opinion and really try and understand how you feel things have gone to date. So the question that we'd like to ask is, for those of you that have transitioned to remote working, do you believe that your business is at a greater security risk now that everyone is working remotely? So we've really 3 questions. It's really answers if you feel it's not applicable. If you feel yes, potentially we do believe we are potentially more at risk, or no. And I suppose the point that I'm feeding off what Richard just said there is, we know from a head office that there's security built into firewalls, etc. But when staff start to work remotely, how secure is their home? Routers, firewalls, their own internet service provider. We start to enter the realm of the unknown.
Okay, so thank you for that. We're only going to run the polls for 30 seconds. We don't want to take up too much time. So the results there were quite interesting. 82% of attendees believe that their business is at a greater security risk, whilst 18% believe that there is no change.
Okay, thank you for your feedback there, folks. And we'll hopefully that'll be of some interest for you. So this was our initial, if you think of a checklist, but we tried to look at focus areas, challenge areas, and ultimately the way I would look at it is what would keep us up at night whenever we start to look at going from 3 physical locations to 103 physical locations. And I suppose some of them are straight off the bat, antivirus, anti-malware, which is fine. But then if people are using their own device, what antivirus, anti-malware products do they have? Are they the free versions? Are they part of a normal subscription? Then for us, and I'm sure if some of you are still working off an on-premise server, it was the backups, because the traditional way was we would be backing up at with our tape backups either on-premise, or if we're hosted, they're being backed up in the cloud. But it's the testing of those backups. If we ever had to rely on those in an emergency, would they be resilient enough? And are we backing up everything? Because when you introduce remote working, are people using Dropbox? Are they using other products to maybe share files with clients just to keep in communication? So the rules of governance have potentially changed. And again, these were questions that we were asking ourselves. Obviously, internet connectivity, when people are now working remotely, there's going to be a big drive. So do our employees have suitable internet connections? Do we need to look at 4G dongles? And if they're connected to the office, can our office take that? If either connecting to the cloud or connecting directly into the main server? Because we do believe that we've clients out there that their servers were fine for maybe 1 or 2 people connecting remotely at the weekend or at night, maybe some of the directors, but all of a sudden trying to open that up for 20 or 30 people to access their systems. It's the original solution was maybe never designed for that. Can it cope with that kind of traffic? The other big thing is where I'm sitting here at home in Belfast, our firewall switches, they're in a cabinet in the office. So we don't have eyes on those at the minute. Are they working correctly? Are they not working correctly? Are there any concerns or issues that we have in terms of that hardware? And again, then we were very conscious that all of a sudden we've gone from being able to just chat to someone to actually working through collaboration tools like Teams, document sharing. And for us, maybe in the IT industry, that's more of a natural step. But I know for a lot of our clients, this was a step that all of a sudden we have to start embracing these tools. So again, are we backing everything up? Do we know what people are using, and is it working for them? I know this was for a lot of us when you're no longer at the office. You've got your typical queries. Is everything working okay? Is the building secure? Is it all functioning? And for those that still have on-premise servers, are those servers running to their best of their capability? Are we monitoring them? Do we know if everything is okay? And then it was on to some of the basics in terms of insurance. And I believe, weirdly, this was a fact on a quiz that Wimbledon is the only one major sporting event in the UK that actually has cover for the COVID-19 because of the cancellation before they took for SARS. So again, insurance cover. Then when we look at our data, again, we now have 103 offices. So how is that all being backed up and worked? And I suppose we've noticed, and we'll share with you later, that unfortunately there are organizations out there that will take a pandemic and specifically the COVID-19 to really increase cyber attacks. And web browsing, when you're in the office or you're going through a cloud platform, you can control these things, but when people are working remotely, you don't know their home setups. So how can we enforce policies to make sure that all data is encrypted, that the web browsing is secure? And ultimately, if people are going to start to use their own devices or have their own devices at home, how secure are those home environments? So these were initially, if you like, the key checkpoints that we started to look at to say, right, what can we control, what is outside of our control, and what can we impact? And as I say, that this list then became, I suppose, a tad more expansive, but those were the 10 core areas that we initially looked at. Okay,
So
Richard.
the question that we have, obviously the elephant in the room, how do we make the home office secure? Consumer routers, the little black boxes that connect to your internet service provider that gives you internet connectivity at home, are notoriously insecure. There are a large number of exploits circulating at the moment that allow your router to be compromised in a matter of seconds. And in most cases, it happens automatically through bots. So in this case, other infected machines. It doesn't mean that you're vulnerable, but as with any technologies, those risks do exist. So we had to sit back and we had to plan this out very, very carefully. We need to work out, how do we take our own premise firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and how do we place that in every single home without having to buy 103 of everything. So home is where the data center is. With the potential of 100 new remote offices, our number one priority, as I mentioned, was to protect the business, its employees, and our customers. To help achieve this, we implemented a highly unique solution. We rerouted all of our employees' internet traffic, both their home internet traffic and our offices, through our London data center to provide us with real-time threat protection. Whilst we protected the business in less than 24 hours, these measures will ultimately provide us with long-term benefits when we return to normality or should a second wave strike. So instead of having to worry about 103 separate locations, we only have to control and manage one single location. That ultimately is our data center environment, which we know is highly secure. By forcing all that internet traffic from our employees' homes, every single bit of it, straight into London, we have the ability to see what's happening. We can analyze it in real time. We can inspect it in real time. We can block malicious traffic, for example, malware. We can detect attacks that are happening on our business and attacks against our remote working infrastructure. So in this case, attacks that may be targeted at the homes of our employees. And our system, through the use of intelligent rules developed by Cisco, can automatically block and report on that traffic. So again, it was a very sophisticated solution that we were uniquely placed to design and develop and ultimately implement. And luck was on our side because we had been working on this solution since the beginning of Q4 2019, and we actually made it available in, I think it was mid-February. So from a timing perspective, it was well suited. So once we did that, we instantly ticked off 6 things from our list of concerns. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. I'll pick a couple. Obviously, we'll circulate the slide deck after the event so you can look at it in more detail. What we addressed with step 1, number 1, we implemented real-time attack detection and mitigation, which I've covered. Big data. We gained real-time monitoring and analysis. So through real-time analytics, we can process millions of firewall event logs every single day, ensuring that our network operations and our information security management teams have access to live attack data, whilst allowing us to produce detailed executive reports. The remote endpoint protection obviously forces all of that traffic from our employees' homes directly into London and for our offices and our Belfast data center. So we're getting absolutely everything. We've implemented geolocation restrictions. So whilst our remote working environment can be connected to from anywhere in the world, in most cases, if you have a VPN in your office, you can connect to that regardless of whether you're based in Belfast, Lisbon, France, Nigeria, Russia, wherever it may be. And that means that there is ultimately a security issue there, because if somebody is using a weak password, or if there's no intrusion prevention system in place, that password could be brute forced through thousands, if not millions, of login attempts. So by implementing geolocation restrictions, we can state that only users that are physically located within the United Kingdom or Ireland can attempt to log into our VPN. So we've instantly reduced the potential attack surface from a global to a regional basis. That was a substantial change for us. We then also implemented DNS filtering and advertisement blocking. I'll cover DNS off in a few moments just to explain what it is and where the importance lies with that. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're introducing web filtering to protect our staff from malicious websites. But we're also implementing advertisement blocking. We're all used to seeing advertisements either on websites, and you'd be surprised, on average, a website will have 7 ads, or mobile applications. If you download a free app from the App Store, and whether it's Android or iPhone, you'll probably notice that advertisements block up every so often. But not a lot of people realize that it is a potential security risk. Those advertisements are being used to track activities. In some cases, they're being shared with third parties. So for example, if you're connected to Facebook, then obviously the cookies are sharing that information with the likes of Instagram, which is part of Face Group, and third-party vendors. So to make sure that our staff activities weren't being tracked, we implemented advertisement blocking. So our staff have not seen a single advertisement since they went remote working. So if they load up the Daily Mail or whatever it may be during lunchtime, instead of seeing 10 advertisements, they see absolutely nothing. And the benefits of that are not just from a privacy and security perspective. We're reducing their bandwidth consumption. So for those employees that may have a poor internet connection, They're not wasting their bandwidth downloading images and banners and videos. We're improving website loading times, so websites load faster because there's less content. And we're preventing information leaks, so ultimately we're preventing tracking taking place. And finally, we introduced encrypted DNS. So the domain name system is the phone book of the internet. When you type in bbc.co.uk into your web browser, the domain name system converts that common name, that English name, into an IP address, a set of numbers, which is the physical address of a server somewhere in the world that hosts those files and folders. Okay, every server has an IP address, but to make it easier, rather than you having to remember that bbc.co.uk is located at 82.195.26.12, you simply need to type in bbc.co.uk into your browser, and the internet manages the rest of that for you. The downside to that is, when you type in bbc.co.uk in your browser, that query is sent to, in most cases, your internet service provider to say, I want to load up BBC, but it's in plain text. So that means that your internet service provider can read that request, so they know that you're visiting BBC, they can keep a record of it. But because it's sent in plain text, anybody can read it. That request can be intercepted and it can be manipulated. So through DNS poisoning, for example, I can intercept your request and I could redirect that request to a malicious server. And that malicious server, you wouldn't know otherwise, you believe it would be genuine, but it can serve malware, it could serve advertisements, whatever it may be. So by using encrypted DNS, as it states, we're encrypting that query. So when we type in bbc.co.uk, it's sent to a DNS resolver, and it's encrypted. So we're protecting our employees from any type of DNS attack, significantly improving ultimately privacy and security. It's a relatively, certainly the technology has been around for a long time. It's not well known, but for those of you that follow technology news, you will see that as Firefox are introducing encrypted DNS by default in some of their latest releases, so it will become exceptionally more common over time.
So, Richard, I mean, I know we had this challenge when I used to say, well, why can't we just use a normal VPN? Why do we have to have this umbrella? So for those people that are maybe thinking, well, we use Cisco AnyConnect, we have a VPN between us and the server. Why would I even need to? Why did you have to do what you did?
So before we went to remote working, we had what we would now class as a normal VPN. A VPN allows you to connect from any remote location into your business or into a server to allow you to access your files, folders, or your remote desktop. And that is a secure connection. So you're creating an encrypted connection from your device to your server. The downside to that is that's where it stops. And in most cases, as you'll see on the slide, it's configured as what's known as a split tunnel. So when you establish your VPN connection, only the traffic that needs to go to your office goes to your office. But everything else, for example, like your traffic that's going to BBC, goes out your home internet connection. And the idea is really simple. You don't want to send everything down to your office because you're going to experience congestion. You're going to saturate your line. You're going to have a poor experience, but you have no value added security functionality. You don't have intrusion prevention and detection. You don't have encrypted DNS. You don't have DNS filtering. So by taking all of our traffic into London, we're getting a VPN service. We're using that normal VPN service, but we've added 12 to 14 additional security features on top of that. So we've gone above and beyond, and we're capturing all of it. That's the most important thing, regardless of whether it's personal internet activity or whether it's business related activity. 100% of that traffic goes through our data centers, which means that it's the same environment as if we were physically in the office. We're forcing everybody to go through the systems to protect the business. So it's called dogfooding. Dog fooding is short for eating your own dog food, which represents the practice of using your own products. For experience, we utilized a number of our own product and service offerings to overcome a number of security challenges as part of our transition to remote working. We had to dog food. We had a lot of unique circumstances that we needed to address, and we could not find commercially available products to do so, or it would have involved the implementation of a large number of different solutions from various vendors, which means that the management and the maintenance of those systems would have become unrealistically challenging. So whilst we have dog fooded some of our products for a very short term, primarily during the initial development, we are dog fooding more than ever, because as you'll see in the upcoming slides, we're using more and more and more and more of our own developed products to try and address some of those issues.
Okay, and I suppose really from our perspective, it was trying to see how could we ensure that with our 103 remote offices, we had as good as, if not better, security. Because I don't know what the rest of you feel, but we certainly believe that remote working, a hybrid of it with social distancing is going to be the new norm. So we'd like your opinion, your feedback. Knowing what you know now, how prepared do you believe the business is to defend the current threat landscape? So it's really trying to take into consideration some of the additional threats that we've talked about that we were concerned about. And do you feel how prepared you are?
We're certainly getting some interesting statistics on this one. Certainly not what I typically would have expected. Again, we're only going to allow it to run for 30 seconds. We've still got a couple of votes coming in, so we'll just let those complete.
Yeah. And whilst people are doing that, I suppose our big concern is that our clients expect us to be secure. They expect us to be able to manage the data that we do manage and ultimately stay ahead of the curve. So initially when we looked at remote working, we thought, yep, not a problem, flick on a light switch. But in reality, we needed to really look at something that would really allow us to rubber stamp the fact that we're happy with all the encryption and how data is being managed and monitored and how we're looking after everything.
Okay, so that was quite interesting. We'll close that poll. Off. So 56% of attendees believe that they are well prepared, and 44% believe that they are not well prepared. So that is quite interesting. There, at one point, we were sitting 50-50 for the first 40 to 45 seconds. So that is quite interesting.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. So, look, we're conscious of time. We do want to have some Q&A. So, look, what we wanted to share with you is ultimately the security checklist that we've ended up with. And I suppose it's a bit like an onion where you've got layer upon layer upon layer, ultimately to have a multi-layered approach to addressing the evolving threats. Okay, so if I take the first few, I mean, obviously we have the anti-spam, so we tend to work with a recognized solution, Proofpoint, which helps with the blocking attachment spam and phishing emails. From a malware antivirus, we obviously have the various product sets from Sophos, GFI, and ESET. Again, you know, you're trying your best to go for main products and brands out there that you know will work and catch the majority of threats. From a backups, and I'm hoping all of you are aware of this, but it's not just backing up your server data, but your Office 365. Microsoft, as I'm sure most of you know, have a retention policy. They don't actually have a backup policy in Office 365. So we would use the products like Veeam, and we use that to back up our OneDrive, our emails, and any documents in SharePoint.
SharePoint, SharePoint, OneDrive, and emails. So
Yeah,
Veeam backup for Office 365 is really a critical requirement because our employees and to an extent a large number of our customers are storing files within OneDrive. Once that data goes off platform, obviously Veeam backup for Office 365 allows you to maintain control over that data. So if you need to recover an email or a mailbox or a file or a folder, either because it's been accidentally deleted or whether it's been misplaced, that allows you to recover from a granular level or to restore an entire archive. Just to point out, you probably notice there are a couple of things on this list that are marked as undisclosed. For obvious reasons, there are certain elements that we can't disclose for our own security. It doesn't mean that it's not in place, but it's obviously just to protect ourselves. We'll give you examples where we can. Products that we genuinely have tested and we believe in. For the case of the likes of monitoring, alerting, and analysis at the very bottom, you'll see that we haven't given examples because, again, we only want to recommend truly trusted products. The next one I'll pick up in the next couple, patch and asset management. We've got over 100 devices, as I mentioned earlier, laptops, desktop servers. So patch management is absolutely critical. Just over a week ago, Microsoft released 101 updates on Patch Tuesday to address 101 vulnerabilities, of which 15 of them were listed as critical. 4 were known as 0 days, which means that, again, those security vulnerabilities were known and they were being targeted actively in the wild. That keeps me up at night probably more so than anything. So what we do is we have a relatively sophisticated patch management system in place. Every single time one of our employees powers on their device, our patch management system scans their system. It records every application that's installed, the version, all of the hardware information, serial numbers, pretty much everything you can imagine. And it will identify missing updates, not just for the operating system for Windows, but it will identify what third-party updates are missing as well. So we support over 350 updates, which means that we can update the likes of Java, Adobe PDF Reader, Firefox, Chrome, etc., all of the common applications that our employees have installed, but they rarely update themselves. So we can force that upon them. It also gives us a very unique capability where if we become aware of a vulnerable application, a good example will be CC Cleaner from, I think it was 2019, where their development environment had actually been exploited and malicious code was inserted into their commercial products and then ultimately released to their end users. When we became aware of that, we had the ability to blacklist that product. Instantly, our system uninstalled it across the board and notified users through a pop-up message that it had been determined to be vulnerable and ultimately removed. So that's really valuable to me and to my team at the moment, because as people are working remotely, they're installing more and more third-party applications because they want to listen to music or they want to listen to the radio, whatever it may be. So we need to gain control over those activities. Micro patch management is very unique, and it's a relatively new product that we've introduced internally. We've just rolled it out to Lisburn, Peterborough, and Glasgow within the last few weeks. Micro patch management is a sticky plaster. So a 0-day vulnerability, just to reiterate, is when a vulnerability exists in a piece of software, but the software developers have not yet fixed it, so they haven't released a patch. That means that vulnerability can be exploited at any time. If you don't have a patch, you can't use patch management. What micro patch management does is a third party will investigate the issue. They will release a very tiny fix and they instantly push that out to their estate. In this case, it's our customers or our environment. And those micro patches apply a sticky plaster to mitigate the vulnerability. And then once the software developer releases an official patch, it removes itself, it unloads. So it offers temporary protection. And that, again, that's a relatively new technology. And it's even more important for Windows 7 users. Not every organization has been in the fortunate position where they've been able to get Windows 7 truly out of their environment So micro patch management allows those customers to receive security fixes from, in this case, Zero Patch, which is the name of the security company, until they're in a better position to replace it with Windows 10. Now, that should not replace the extended support functionality that is available, where you can purchase a license from Microsoft that increases on an annual basis, that allows you to get Windows updates as normal. But again, if those updates are delayed or a zero-day vulnerability is identified, micro patch management is absolutely essential. And then we're not going to go through these next points in detail. Our intrusion prevention detection, our remote VPN services, our policy enforcement, our real-time threat analysis were all knocked on the head and consolidated into our security as a service platform, which is where we reroute all the traffic through London. Previously, we had solutions in place, don't get me wrong, but it was from many vendors, very challenging to manage. So by consolidating everything into one platform, instead of having individually skilled engineers, so for example, 2 or 3 engineers within in a department that are capable of managing system A, C, and Z, we implemented one system that could be managed by everyone, whilst increasing the benefits. And for us, significantly reducing cost, because we're no longer having to purchase maintenance or warranties on many third-party devices or applications at the same time, whilst gaining additional functionality. Vulnerability management, again, really simple. We scan all of our devices that are internet facing, our firewalls, our switches, our routers, all of our critical infrastructure in London and Belfast, to see if there's any known vulnerabilities. Are we publishing something to the internet that we shouldn't be? Is there something out there that somebody could exploit? So our system performs a scan every day. It attempts to gain access to those systems. And then every day we get a detailed report, and these are very detailed reports, don't get me wrong. If everything goes well, your report might be 8 pages long, very high level. But if it finds a number of issues, you could end up with a report that's 400 pages long. And that, if you get a report of that size, then certainly you're missing a lot, to say the least. So that gives us a little bit of extra confidence that, again, we've got eyes on everything that we need to. We then have just 2 other points. Multi-factor authentication, absolutely essential in this day and age. 2-factor authentication helps to protect core systems. So in our case, we use a mixture of technologies. We use what's called YubiKeys, which are little physical authentication tokens. They look a little bit like a USB pen that we have on our keys. And we plug that into the USB port and we press a button. And that allows our engineers to verify their identity before they can log into some core systems. We use RSA tokens. We also have the soft tokens used through Microsoft Authenticator and Google Authenticator. The reason why we have both is some services only support Google, some only support Microsoft. So that's why we have a bit of a mix. It can be a little bit challenging, but ultimately until applications and services standardize, that will always be the case. We're protecting Office 365 obviously through Microsoft Authenticator. So for our users to log into the administrative portals or to log into their email, they get a real-time notification on their phone to say that somebody's trying to log in. Do they approve it or decline it? And as soon as they tap approve, they instantly log in. The overhead is incredibly minimal. It's about an extra 3 seconds, but the security that it provides is incredible. If a username or password manages to leave the organization and a third party attempts to log in, they can't get any further without having to authenticate themselves with one of these additional products. So that is absolutely essential. And then finally, encryption. Obviously, our laptops, our desktops are now located at home. We need to make sure that in the event that they're lost or stolen, the data is encrypted. So we simply use BitLocker that's built into Windows to secure that data. It's typically more important, I have to say, in general day-to-day use, because it's more common for users to leave their laptops in a taxi, to leave it at, for example, if you go to visit a friend or family, you leave your bag, etc., etc. It gives you greater security. But in the event that somebody has a break-in and a laptop is stolen, for example, we can be truly confident that the data is secure. And then some. There's ultimately a huge number of different measures that you can take, and everybody does different things at different times to address the individual needs of their business. This is what we've done, and whilst we haven't disclosed some of them, every single thing on this list will apply to your businesses, to your organizations. They're all common techniques that you can put in place to avoid the common security threats that we see in the industry as a whole, but that we have hands-on experience with. We know what our customer challenges are. We know what they're facing. We know what they're seeing. We know what's being exploited, obviously, because we're working to address those with customers. So we truly believe that these are points that you can take away, you can review, and progress if necessary.
Thank you, Richard. Just really, we're wrapping up now before we get into some questions, but we would track very closely, obviously, the National Cyber Security Centre. And we certainly have seen, and we know some of our clients have reported to us seeing a significant increase in malicious emails, malicious traffic, and there is unfortunately an increasing number of exploits, and it's using the COVID-19 as a subject or claiming for financial assistance, etc. So again, it's just to be very mindful of these. And what we found was interesting was at the same time, the surge in home working has increased the use of potentially vulnerable services such as VPNs. So, whilst VPNs are vitally important, it's putting that additional layer of security over that.
To give you
Richard,
an idea,
sorry, go ahead.
To give you an idea of what we're seeing, we have a number of real-time dashboards that allow us to identify threats that are targeting our customers. So I want to give you a quick overview just of what we've seen. These statistics are from yesterday, so April 27th. And what it is showing here is that between the working hours of, just off the top of my head, I believe it's midnight until around 6 o'clock, we blocked 100,275 malicious requests. So those are effectively it's bad traffic, whether it be a simple probe or whether it be an actual attack. And that originated from 7,887 unique sources, okay? And that probably originated from 25, 30 plus separate countries. Even though it's very hard for you to see the graphic for obvious reasons, you can see that the top attacking countries were the United States, followed by Russia, the Netherlands, China, France, the United Kingdom, and Bulgaria, just to give you a sample. This information is produced in real time, so when our network operations and security management teams are reviewing the data, everything is organically changing in real time. It's not a historic report, so that allows us to see what's happening right there and then. You'll see there is a shaded bar roughly in the middle of the picture, a very light pink color, ultimately increasing to red. And that's the system flagging up background noise in a very light color to red, i.e. something is happening right at this instant. And that gives us a very unique capability where we can go back in time. We can time travel effectively. We can click on that little red button and get every single piece of data from that exact second in time. Where did it originate from? What type of attack was it? We can then analyze that and block it across our entire estate. The system will organically block it and take action to protect it, but if we want to block it from accessing our entire network, we can drop it instantly there and then, rather than simply putting a temporary block in place. Since we went remote working in the middle of March, we have managed, give or take, probably around 15 attacks. 15 attacks in a sense that we've proactively just dropped it and blocked it from our entire network infrastructure across the country. Not because they were successful, but they were persistent, to say the least.
Okay. So finally, folks, we're open up for questions, but we would really appreciate your opinion on the last question. Knowing what you know now, do you believe that your business is at a greater security risk? We genuinely believe it's an ever moving feast, but it's one that we all have to be very, very mindful of.
Okay, even more interesting.
So
This is where you need to fill in, Patrick. Keep the attendees interested. It's a
I
long 30
know, I
seconds.
know, it is a long 30 seconds. Well, Richard, I actually did receive a question there, so I'll hold that for our first question, and then see if we can get a response
Okay, so
back from you.
we're going to close this in a couple of seconds. We're just waiting for the last person, and we're done. Okay, so 75% of attendees believe they are at a greater security risk, and 25% said that they're not at an increased security risk. So thank you very much once again for providing us with your feedback.
Okay, we're going to open up now for questions just on the chat. So please feel free to issue any questions to Richard and I. But what we are doing is we are holding a virtual coffee morning on Thursday, April the 29th at 11 o'clock. So please feel free to join us should you have any additional queries. We'll send out invitations later today, and we can either discuss one-on-one any queries that you might have, or just have an overall chat just to say if there's anything you'd just like to ask us from a security perspective. So that will be on Thursday the 29th. But Richard, I have a sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if you would like to ask questions, obviously in the GoToWebinar panel that you should have on your screen, you can type a comment. So please feel free to send that across to us, and we'll do our very best to answer it. I like the really difficult ones, so if you send them my way, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, Richard, if I can ask you a really difficult one that has come in.
Brilliant.
If we have staff who are working remotely and they would normally connect through an RDS session to access the systems.
Mm-hmm.
But because of performance or whatever, we told them not to go through RDS to access the internet. So does that increase a security risk?
If they're advised not to use RDS?
Yeah, so instead of if they use RDS to go to their main core application, but then if they want to go onto the internet, they just go through their normal browser.
Yeah, so that introduces an enormous security risk. Remote desktop services has an enormous benefit for any business, primarily because of this standardization. You can standardize and enforce policies that apply to individual users, groups of users, for example, departments or the entire business. You can choose what they can do, what permissions they have, what they can and can't access, but it also gives you the ability to report on permissions and activity. So should you have a legal or compliance issue, you can look at what has been done. You can produce a permissions report to see who has access to what files and what folders. Whereas when they're working on their local device, you lose all of that capability, or a vast majority of that capability. So yes, we would highly recommend that they continue to use remote desktop just to provide you with that capability. Security, the likes of our security as a service solution can help mitigate that in its entirety. But again, it's all about standardization.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, one query. Yes, the virtual coffee morning will be Thursday. Sorry if I get the wrong date. Tomorrow's Wednesday. It'll be Thursday the 30th. Apologies, folks.
We were doing so well.
We were doing so well, and I fell at the last hurdle.
The benefit is whilst we're recording the session, we can cut this bit out, and then no one will ever know.
Right, and it's actually 10 until 11. I do apologize.
Oh, Patrick, you're on fire.
So I will send that out. So Thursday morning from 10 a.m. to 11, and say just we'll have a virtual coffee and answer any queries that you might have.
Great work. Okay, so just to
I have
confirm,
another couple of
Thursday, 30th.
questions.
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thursday the 30th. How do you approach privacy when you are monitoring private browsing?
So I'm going to think about this one very carefully.
Well,
During what
if I can
during
come in here, what the way we're working this is ultimately during the working hours. If people are on company devices or on company activity, then the company policy would be, if you like, what we would adhere to. The same
exactly?
way
So our
any other business on Facebook or anything else, you're trying to protect the data, you're trying to protect the business and ultimately employees from potential misuse from an IT perspective.
Exactly. So our policies, whether they be social media policies, internet usage policies, email policies, etc. Again, it's during working hours and on company equipment. We do advise, obviously, that if somebody is using a personal device, that they disconnect from their VPN outside of working hours, and they are made aware, obviously, that if they leave their VPN connected, then obviously that traffic is routing through our environment as well. So again, it is contractual. It is part of our policies. It's no different to if we were working in the office or whether everybody's working at home. And I guess that's the idea. We're bringing the office to the employee's house, so there's no change, no difference.
Okay.
Any others?
More to do actually just with the virtual coffee morning at this stage, Richard. Um, and no, not at the moment. I mean, we've one more minute if anyone does have any other questions about anything that we've covered today. Okay. So will we wrap up, Richard?
Yeah, we'll wrap up. Again, hopefully everybody's keeping well and you're looking after yourselves. We'd love to see you in the virtual coffee morning on Thursday, April the 30th. Even if you just want to drop in and say hello, we would certainly appreciate your time. Hope you found today beneficial to you. If you have any queries, we'll see you on Thursday. And again, thank you very much.
Okay. You might want to go on to the last slide, which basically says thank you very much. There you go. So thank you, everyone. A copy of the slides will also be sent out. And as I say, we will be issuing a feedback form just to vote for the best presenter. It probably would be myself, I'm sure. But again, thank you very much indeed for everyone that has stayed on, asked the questions and attended. Take care.